you so much for taking time to talk with me about your short film, The After. I appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
So, Misan, let's start with you. This is a tragic story about grief and loss and the journey to heal. Where did this idea start for you?
I think it's the tapestry of you know, personal experiences and reflections, but really the crescendo of it all was lockdown, and George Floyd, 2020 being that year where we couldn't pretend anymore that we were okay. And I think this film was born out of a big part of the experience all of us went through in the summer of 2020.
Hmm. And why did you feel that this story was best suited for a short film?
Well, I think as a new filmmaker, the medium of short films is a great way to not just learn the ropes, but to really not be overwhelmed into the storytelling process. And I felt the narrative arc for Dayo, if we did our job correctly, could be put into that 18-minute viewing time. So, I think history will let us know if we did our job correctly, but I felt we could pack it in.
And David, how did you get connected with Misan, and how did you come to star in The After?
Misan had reached out to me over Instagram through a DM. I never ever checked them, so it was probably one of the things that suggests this was fated in some way. I was in the UK at the time. We were in the red hot eye of COVID, so people were not really in each other's orbit. I was shooting something, but it was beset with all the COVID protocols. So we were in that very bizarre time in recent human history. But I had been aware of Misan's photographs of the Black Lives Matter movement, and had been very, very taken by how arresting each and every image I was seeing that he took. There was a story in there. And so when I connected the dots between the photographs I'd been seeing and the man who had just slid into my DMs, I thought, oh my gosh, it's that guy. And he had mentioned in that DM to me that he was looking to segue into movie making, and he had an idea he wanted to talk to me about. And soon after that, we set a call, and he started speaking to me about this idea, which sounded very intense, but what really garnered my attention was the fact that I just thought the mind and the perspective that was capturing these images that felt like stories in and of themselves, that combined with the moving image is something that I'm very interested to explore, and that's how our relationship began.
So is the lesson from that people should just DM
Light
you, light up your DMs? Is that okay?
Don't you dare suggest that. My life will be a hell.
Well, this is very performance heavy, and a heavy performance at that. How did you get yourself in the headspace, and how did Misan help you get in the headspace to portray especially those especially emotional scenes?
Misan and I connected over our own individual experiences with grief. He lost a cousin under very tragic circumstances in the 7/7 bombings in London. I had recently lost both my parents over the period of about 3 to 4 years through various illnesses. One, my mom, it was a protracted process. She was in a vegetative state for 3 years before she eventually passed away. So that was a very bizarre grieving process, which, if I'm totally honest, continues till today. And then my dad, who died of colon cancer, that was more orthodox, if you like, and weirdly more healthy, more normal. But I had had two interactions with losing people who are very, very near and dear to me. And so those emotions were palpable, that they were very accessible. For me, they still are. And what really scared me about this film was the fact that I knew, because of the kind of actor I aspire to be, that that will inevitably be something I would have to draw on. And it led to a bit of resistance for a moment there, of wanting to engage. But for whatever reason, seared into my DNA is the need to be scared when it comes to storytelling. And so um, that fear became the driving force for wanting to do the film.
Hmm. And Misan, how did you touch on your own grief throughout the filmmaking process?
You know, one of the things we all need to recognize is that, you know, vulnerability is part of the human story, and it's something that I've been going through, like many of us, particularly after the last 3 years. You know, I would be lying to you if I said that I haven't had moments of deep retrospection on facing the parts of myself that I've been running away from for too long. But I think beyond my own grief, there is, you know, David touched upon the cultural, you know, almost identical experiences in terms of who we are. Nigerian born, raised in the UK, similar ages. And I think within that there's an unspoken trust that I know David gave me, and I would hope I gave him, that would allow the places that his performance go to feel, I would say, warranted and protected. It's really difficult to articulate someone who you met a year ago, yet it feels like our forefathers knew each other, you know. And then to have you know, and I look like David's late father, and I think, you know, to be on set and he could just give me eye contact, you know, it's hard to explain, Daniel, but there's something else beyond us going on, without getting too spiritual. And maybe that yeah, I don't want to speak for David, but maybe that it, you know, helped him to go to some of the places that he did.
That's amazing. Well, I want to talk about the filmmaking as well. Toward the end of the short, Misan, you have a really nice long shot, 2 minutes or so, from the girl's hug to David getting in the car. Tell me about the process of capturing that long take.
One thing I'll say is the Steadicam guy had just, you know, he had a bout of COVID on another shoot, and he was coming back, and I felt for him because you know, holding that rig and having the director want to do that long shot was one of those things where I was like, oh gosh, you know. But again, you know, we built that around David's performance. You don't know in a scene like that what the physicality of grief was going to be. You can storyboard all you like, but when it's, you know, when it's game time, and you see what the actor's doing, what David did, it was clear to me that we mustn't leave him. You know, if the family's going to leave him on the floor, the camera is staying with him. And I think it created a scene where we were forced to face you know, not just his story, but also you know, the family and how they reacted, and of course a hug. There was nowhere to hide anymore in that specific shot that you're talking about. And I think many people will take different things from it, but it was really important to have it to be unflinching, for the from the viewpoint of the person watching it.
Yeah, and David, like you said, there was nowhere to hide for you. So how did you kind of run through the gamut of emotions that you did throughout that long shot?
Well, as I alluded to earlier, I knew that the job with this was going to be to crack my heart open and allow the camera and the audience in. So I didn't know what would happen on that day, but I had done a fair bit of reading around people who had lost children, and there were several accounts that described very bizarre behavior, which, time having elapsed, the people talking about these experiences were able to recognize that that was bizarre behavior, but it's what they did. I remember an account of a woman who had just lost her child and just curled up in the fetal position in her child's bed for 3 days, just wailing. And that level of emotion was something she had not seen in herself before. Those sounds she made were not sounds she knew. That position. Of course, we all know the significance of the fetal position, and the location of it in her child's bed. I mean, this was one of many accounts of just people. Another family decided to, rather than have a funeral party, they decided to have a birthday party. And some family members felt that was completely bizarre, but I remember the woman saying it was the only way she could handle the fact that her child was gone, was to have a birthday party. She did not want to have a wake, and which is kind of bizarre. So my point is that I turned up on the day just trying to put myself in the place of what happens if you are stuffing down this emotion, and for whatever reason, a connection with a girl you've never met before who reminds you in some way of your daughter comes along and touches the most vulnerable, guarded part of yourself. What happens? What happens if the cork is unplugged? What happens if the dam breaks in the most unlikely of places? And all I knew is that what should happen should be messy. And thankfully I had a director in Misan who was not scared of that, and who knew that capturing that in the most respectful way was the way to do it.
Well, you talked about your shared relationship with grief, the two of you. You also have the shared relationship of you're both fathers, both have kids, and of course, this is a story about losing a child as well as a wife. What did that shared experience of fatherhood? How did that impact the after?
Well, my kids are still little. They're 3 and 5, and I'll dare say that I've said this many times. I'm learning from them. I think currently they're teaching me more than I could ever teach them. And there are two really incredible performances by two young women in this film, and we need to listen to our kids, our youth, more. Obviously, in the final part of this film, there is a child that is seemingly unseen by her own family, yet she sees David when he needs to be seen. And I'll leave it to the audience to decide what the hug means. But certainly, the agency we give children in this film is intentional, and it may or may not come from me being a father, but I certainly recognize that their voice, their understanding of emotional situations is very, very important.
It's beautiful. Well, I wish I could chat with you longer, but before I let you go, Misan, you're obviously a legendary photographer, like we talked about, but this is your first ever produced film. How different was that experience for you, and will there be more? Is this the start of a journey?
Well, if the industry wants me, I am available. So I am I am following in the wisdom really of David, and hopefully he will not get bored of hanging out with me, and will show me the ropes. Of course, yes, early days. We're still really celebrating, the fact that we've put what we've put on the screen with the after, and what will be. I feel this is what I was born to do. And I'm 45 years old, and it's taken whatever time taken for me to get to this place, and I hope I will be given the opportunity to tell more stories.
Well, if I have anything to do with it, that's a resounding yes. It's not every day you find someone so in tune with the human condition. If our job as storytellers and filmmakers is to hold a mirror up to that human condition, I simply cannot think of someone I would have more of a privilege to be in their orbit than Misan. 18 minutes to evoke the kind of emotion, to display the kind of assuredness with the camera, with actors, with the story, with the themes, is truly astounding. I've rarely come across that in my 25-year career. And then you combine that with him being a transcendent human being, steeped in humility as well. So he's not going anywhere. Is the short and simple answer.
Wonderful. Well, I can't wait to see what comes next for both of you. Again, thank you for the film, and thank you for your time today.